What if the very core of what makes us human, our creativity, how we think, how we understand, what if that's being copied, maybe even done better by machines?
It's a huge question. Really cuts to the chase in this age of AI.
Welcome to the deep dive. We're here to filter out the noise and give you the stuff that really matters. Today, we are diving deep into this really fascinating chat between two heavyweights in the AI field. Geoffrey Hinton, people often call him the AI godfather, and Nick Frost.
Right. Frost is the co-founder of Cohere, a pretty big AI startup now.
And their recent fireside chat, this was July 21st, 2025. It wasn't just your standard tech talk.
No, definitely not. They agreed on some things, sure, but also disagreed pretty profoundly on, well, everything from how smart AI actually is to the dangers and how it's going to completely change how we live.
So our mission here is to unpack what they said, pinpoint where their views really split, and maybe help you figure out what this all means for, your world.
You were pulling this straight from a really candid interview on 36KR. It's raw, it's insightful, just these two experts laying it out.
Okay, so let's get into it. Maybe first, just a bit more on who we're hearing from.
Yeah, good idea. So Geoffrey Hinton, he's a Turing Award winner, basically revered as the AI godfather. His work on neural nets, deep learning foundational stuff, and he often brings this philosophical angle to it. Makes you stop and think.
And Nick Frost, co-founder of Cohere, which is, like you said, a major AI player. But what's really interesting is the history there.
Right. He was Hinton's very first hire at the Google Brain Lab in Toronto.
So you've got this mentor-mentee thing going on, even as they're debating these massive ideas. Adds a whole other layer.
It really does. And they covered so much ground. Do these large language models, these LLMs, do they actually understand anything? Can digital minds really become smarter than biological ones? What are the most promising uses?
And they even got into how tech giants really feel about regulation. That sounded pretty blunt.
It was surprisingly frank, yeah. And crucially, they talked about what Hinton calls the dual dangers of AI, the short-term problems and the bigger existential ones, plus how we might even start to build safety systems. It's a huge scope.
Okay, let's tackle that first big question then. AI understanding. Does it get it? Hinton jumps right in on this, right? He talks about the mistake fallacy.
Yeah, exactly. His core point is, look, when these models mess up on really complex tasks, people immediately say, see, it doesn't understand.
Right, like it's proof positive.
But Hinton says, hang on, he uses this analogy, think of someone with a learning disability. They might handle simple things fine, but struggle with the complex stuff.
You wouldn't say they have zero understanding, though.
Precisely. Hinton's view is that reasoning is like progressive. It's a spectrum, not just on or off, black or white.
And he mentioned some research, too, something about how they handle questions.
Yeah, he pointed out that models are quick with easy questions. They take a bit longer for medium ones, and then they fail fast on the really hard ones.
But they are reasoning on those simpler tasks.
Right. It shows capability, just maybe not across the board yet. It suggests levels of understanding.
Okay, so that leads to how AI learns versus us. Frost brings up a key difference here.
He does. He points out that LLMs, once they're trained, the pre-training, then the reinforcement learning bit, they're basically static, fixed.
They don't just keep learning from every new thing they see like we do.
Not in the same way. To add new knowledge or skills, you generally have to retrain the whole base model. That's a massive technical challenge right now.
Huge hurdle.
Yeah. Now, Hinton sort of agrees AI can learn continuously, but he has this caveat. It's unpredictable and maybe not always what you want, a system constantly changing in ways you can't track. That could be messy.
Which kind of opens up this whole other can of worms. Consciousness. Where does AI fit in there?
And this is where they really start to diverge. It's fascinating. Frost has this great analogy.
The airplane versus the bird.
That's the one. He says AI works like an airplane, human thought is like a bird. Both achieve flight or intelligence, but the way they do it, the mechanics underneath, totally different.
So it's useful, it gets the job done, but don't mistake it for being a bird. Don't mistake it for human consciousness.
Exactly. It highlights the utility without jumping to conclusions about consciousness. And he builds on that with his consciousness spectrum idea.
Okay, tell me about that.
He basically argues consciousness isn't just on or off, it's a spectrum, a stone, almost zero consciousness, a tree, maybe a tiny bit.
And LLMs?
Somewhere in the middle, he suggests. Humans are up at the top end. It really pushes back against that binary view we tend to have.
And Hinton, does he buy the spectrum idea?
He agrees with the spectrum concept, yeah. but he seems to lean more towards thinking AI's subjective experience could be closer to ours, probably drawing on his philosophy background.
He mentioned something interesting, too, about how people interact with these models.
Oh yeah, the goodbye thing. He observed that after really deep chats with LLMs, a lot of users naturally say goodbye, like they would to a person.
I have totally done that. It feels weirdly polite, even though you know it's a machine.
Right. Hinton thinks it might hint at some subtle connection forming, but Frost is pretty skeptical here.
What's his take?
2 main points. First, he brings up old experiments from the 60s, stuff like ELIZA, showing that even super simple programs could trick people into projecting emotions onto them, long before sophisticated AI.
So it's more about us projecting than the machine being anything.
That's his angle. And second, he uses a personal story naming his childhood dolls. He knew they didn't understand, but he still connected with them. So being polite to AI, maybe it's just for our own comfort, making the interaction feel smoother for us.
That makes sense. It taps into how we're wired socially. And Hinton even admitted he finds himself trusting GPT-4 more and more without checking its answers.
Yeah, which is kind of telling. Frost puts it in historical context, reminding us that, hey, new tech always freaks people out about our own abilities. Like the ancient Greeks worrying that writing would wreck everyone's memory.
It's a recurring pattern, isn't it? Fear of the new tool.
Definitely. Okay, so shifting gears a bit, from consciousness to the practical side of the workplace, here they actually seem to agree quite a bit.
On what specifically?
On this idea that we're heading towards an era where natural language, just talking or typing, becomes the main way we interact with complex software for office tasks. They call it language as an operating system.
Language as the OS. I like that. It could totally change how we work.
Frost really paints a picture here. He talks about his own work changing. Instead of clicking around, he's using commands like summarize these emails, check them against Salesforce, now draft a response.
So the AI isn't the all-knowing oracle. It's more like a dispatcher, telling other tools what to do.
Exactly. Using language to coordinate different functions. It makes complex digital tasks feel as natural as just talking. That's a huge shift if it plays out.
Okay, but what about creativity? That feels like a human domain.
Well, Hinton makes a pretty bold claim here. He says LLMs are very creative. He thinks they can find hidden connections, things humans might totally miss.
He gave that compost tea example, right? Compared to an atomic bomb.
Yeah, that was wild. GBI4, before it was even online, apparently found a link based on chain reactions. Hinton thinks this comes from the model compressing massive amounts of data, finding these abstract patterns.
And he mentioned creativity tests, too.
He did. Said that even a few years back, LLMs were outperforming 90% of humans on standard creativity tests, which, if true, really makes you wonder, what is human creativity then, if machines can match it or beat it?
But Frost pushes back on that.
He does. His view is more grounded. He argues AI's knowledge, its creativity, it all stems back to the data it was trained on.
So it's rearranging puzzle pieces, not creating new ones.
Kind of. It's recombining what it already knows. But it's limited by that initial training. It raises that deep question. Can you have real creativity without actual experience? Or is it just very clever pattern matching?
Which brings us neatly to the risks, the double-edged sword, as you said. Hinton lays out these dual dangers.
Right. Short term, he's worried about things we're already seeing hints of. Manipulating elections, pushing fascism, mass surveillance, helping design weapons, automated ones, or even biological ones like new viruses, and of course, new cyber attacks. Pretty grim list.
Yeah, that's unsettling. And the long-term risk.
That's the big one. AI taking over the world. Existential risk. He defines smarter, very practically, AI winning debates against humans consistently, coming up with solutions we can't even grasp, learning new things incredibly fast.
And he thinks most AI researchers basically accept this possibility.
That's what he claims, yeah. Which makes Frost's skepticism really stand out. Frost agrees future AI will eventually surpass humans, but he doesn't think current tech, even scaled up, gets us to human-level intelligence or superintelligence.
Back to the plane versus the hummingbird.
Exactly. A faster plane doesn't magically become a hummingbird. Different fundamental design.
This difference really shows up in the bioweapons debate, too.
Hugely. Hinton is deeply concerned about designing the sequence for a dangerous virus. He says that's the real bottleneck, not building a lab. He points to these cloud services where you just email a sequence and they mail you back the chemicals.
And regulation is failing there.
He mentioned a U.S. government attempt to get these services to check sequences for dangers. Apparently only 20% are complying, which is alarming.
So Hinton sees the design part as the critical risk point. How does Frost counter that? What's his view on the bioweapon risk?
Frost argues the real hurdles are physical. Setting up a sophisticated lab, getting the right materials, the sheer amount of trial and error needed in biology. It's not just about having the recipe. You need the kitchen and the chef.
He thinks LLMs aren't good at the actual doing part, the experiments.
Right. They're not great at experimental validation, which is everything in bioresearch. So he sees different bottlenecks.
Yeah. Okay. And then there's the job displacement issue. This hits closer to home for a lot of people. Hinton's timeline sounds fast.
Extremely fast. He predicts most brainwork intellectual jobs could be replaced in just 5 years. He talks about an 80% replacement level being the critical danger zone and says we're already seeing impacts, like with junior lawyers.
5 years. Wow. Frost's view.
Oh, more gradual. He sees LLMs potentially displacing maybe 20–30% of office tasks, but he also thinks there's a capability ceiling.
Meaning there are lots of human tasks AI just won't be able to do.
That's his belief. He doesn't see mass job replacement in the next decade. His bigger concern is actually AI making income inequality worse rather than causing mass unemployment itself.
Definitely forces us to think about how we prepare society, whatever the timeline.
Absolutely. But it's not all doom and gloom. Both of them are actually quite optimistic about the potential upside of AI. Hinton sees massive potential in healthcare and education. He thinks AI could make healthcare maybe 10 times more efficient, surprisingly, without huge job losses there, and could even reshape universities.
And Frost, what's his hope?
He hopes AI kills the drudgery. Less time writing boring documents, filling out forms, managing endless emails.
Freeing us up for
More human stuff. Writing poetry, spending time with friends and family, using AI to get back some of our time and focus on creativity or connection. Enhancing human life, not just automating it.
That's a nice vision, but getting there safely requires, well, rules, regulation.
And here, Hinton gets pretty fiery. He really takes aim at some AI companies, specifically mentioning OpenAI's Sam Altman.
What's his critique?
He says they talk a good game about welcoming regulation in public, but behind the scenes they resist concrete binding rules.
He compared them to the oil industry on climate change.
He did, pulled no punches there. And he argues that the only thing that will force politicians to act is strong public opinion. Pressure from us.
But regulating AI isn't straightforward, is it? It's not like climate change, where the goal stop burning carbon is relatively clear.
Exactly. With AI safety, we're still figuring out what safe even looks like. It needs a ton of research just to define the problems, let alone the solutions. It's like trying to write the flight manual while the plane is still being designed and built.
So how do we navigate that uncertainty? Frost had some thoughts there, right? More societal.
Yeah, he drew parallels to the Industrial Revolution. He stressed the need for strong social structures, things like public education about the tech, robust social safety nets to cushion the blows of change. It's less about finding one technical fix, more about building societal resilience.
Which really puts the ball back in our court, in a way. What kind of society do we need to build for this future? So listening to both Hinton and Frost, you get these two really different feelings, don't you? Hinton leaning towards these huge, rapid, maybe even existential shifts.
Yeah, he paints a picture of very profound change very quickly. While Frost is more grounded, focused on the practical limits of today's tech, more cautious about predicting true human-like AI anytime soon, bottlenecks are key for him.
But whichever view feels more likely to you, listening right now, the takeaway seems clear. AI isn't just another gadget.
Not at all. It's changing work, society, even how we think about things like intelligence and consciousness. It's fundamental.
And when Geoffrey Hinton, the AI godfather himself, suggests there's nothing AI cannot replicate and that our human uniqueness might only last a short while longer, well, what does that mean for us?
It's a heavy thought. And how you personally keep thinking critically when the tools you use every day feel like they understand you, even if they don't, not in the way a person does.
Yeah, it raises that final question, doesn't it? Are we learning to live alongside a genuinely new kind of intelligence?
Or are we just getting really, really good at talking to super smart tools? Something to definitely mull over as this all keeps unfolding.